Welcome to Still Growing in Grace. I'm Mike Zanker. Join me and other amazing guests as we explore and discover better, hope-filled perspectives on biblical texts and difficult themes. Prepare to expand your understanding of God's love and amazing grace. Growing in Grace Ministries Canada and Hope Fellowship, as well as Eastside Church, invite you to enjoy today's program as we dig deeper into what it means to be still growing in grace. All right, good morning and welcome to Still Growing Grace. I think you're going to get a treat today. So our guest is Sheri Pallas, and she has written a book. The new book is called We Have Ruined God, which is a really unique title. It says, the bottom, My Journey Out of Religion into Unconditional Love. And she also has a weekly Fireside Creators podcast on video, interviewing folks from you name it topics, ones that typically the church won't take a look at because it's too scary to do. And so I think she tackles those bravely, and I think brilliantly offers hope to those who are not satisfied with the typical church answers. I think her faith it comes through in this book. I've been part of her podcast several times, or at least on the panel for a number of discussions. So that's been a lot of fun. And I think you're going to just love this conversation. Get to know her. She is somebody you should get to know as you expand your understanding of who God is and God's love for everyone. So let's get into this. I'm going to do a quick hello to Cynthia. Good to see you, Cynthia, in the UK watching. Just saw your comment. Woohoo! And I hope you like this one. So let's get into the interview, and here we go. All right, Sheri, welcome to Still Growing Grace. It's an honor to have you finally. Usually I'm heckling you on your program and having a little bit of fun with that, but I wanted to introduce Sheri Pallas to the Still Growing Grace family and network. Sheri, I'm not going to make you say hello and do all that fake TV stuff because that's weird. But you have just written a book called We Have Ruined God, and we're going to get to that book shortly, but I'd love to first hear about who you are, where you've come from, a bit of the Christianese words testimony, but honestly, a bit of your journey, what's safe to share that will inspire why you wrote this book, because I think it's all dovetailed. So would love to know, where do you live? What do you do right now? And then let's get into your story.
Well, initially, I want to heckle you because you are my favorite heckler on my show. But thank you for having me.
And you can't even see my name when I do it.
Yes, but I know the attitude.
Okay,
so
fine.
I know it's you. It's so good to be here and talk to you. I am currently in LA. It took 13 years to get this book out.
It's a long time.
It completely changed my life. It completely changed my goals in life, my priorities, and everything that I see now. I grew up in a very strange world between evangelicalism and high crime, I guess is the best way to be able to say
That's
it.
interesting.
My father, they divorced when I was 2, and their lives went in completely different directions. My mom became a devout evangelical to the point of disowning everyone in her life that she didn't believe aligned with her goals, including me, including my son. And my father grew, if we want to say that word very loosely, into a very high-profile drug dealer. It was once nominated to be the Grand Dragon of the KKK. Me having a black son didn't go over very well. Oh, yeah, that didn't go over very well. So not to give any spoiler alerts, but at one point he asked if he could kill my son to alleviate any burden or proof that I had been with a black man. So, and my mom was just glad he wasn't born a bastard. So there was, those people would assume that if I say my dad was nominated to be the Grand Dragon of the KKK and my mom was an evangelical, most people would assume that one was bad and one was good. But they were actually equally judgmental, hateful, exclusive, all of the things that we associate with things we don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that's who, in fact, someone asked me, is like, how did you become this good person? Or you really see this? And I was like, because it was a rebellion.
Yeah.
My rebellion was love. And that's just a really odd thing.
Wow. Yeah, that I didn't even know that. Wow. Okay. So with that background, let's just double back. So you grew up with that kind of the layers that affected you. Let's go back to your first marriage and what's happened where you at now. Honestly, it helps kind of frame what, because this book's really good. So
Only one marriage. In fact, my ex-husband said after on his third marriage, "You're so smart, you never got married again." And I was like, I learned from my mistakes. He passed in 2016.
wow.
We we believed when we were married that he had the right to my body. He had full authority over me.
Was that
And
like a religious thing or cultural thing?
yes, it
Okay.
was totally an evangelical thing.
Oh boy.
So it took me years to understand that him forcing me to have sex with him just after I had a baby, him forcing me to do sexual acts on him when I didn't want to. And he would say, you know, God demands this. You are my wife. You must do
Wow.
this. Even if I were crying during the act, for years I didn't see it as rape. In fact, if he were here now, he would laugh at me and go, "That wasn't rape,"
Yeah.
but it was.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
was. I mean, if I finally was able to, I mean, I had just had a child. I wasn't even supposed to be having sex, but that didn't matter. So even if I managed to fend him off because of physical reasons, he would just wait till I was asleep. It was a sin for me to reject him. It was a
Wow.
sin for me to want to go to work to support our child. Everything was run through the spectrum of God's control. And I just, while I was raised with that mentality, going through it, it was like, this can't be right.
But
This
you
can't
never questioned
be
it on the
right.
front end, really. You knew it felt bad, but
No, it was, this is the way
wow.
it was. I mean, I opened the book with, I didn't even know I was being raped. I thought that was just life.
Wow.
So I didn't even have the vocabulary or
Yeah.
the instruction to understand that my body was my own. I that was never something that even crossed my mind. If a man was interested in me in any way, then God sent him and I was supposed to subject myself to him. It was never my choice.
Wow.
Up
That
until even a couple years ago. It's heavily indoctrinated.
yeah, and yet you have come through that indoctrination to see true love for what it really is.
Yeah,
And while it is a trauma on you, it is not your true identity. It's
correct.
what's happened to you. And you chose to go through a healing process. I don't know how that happened. I'd be interested to hear some of that too, of what led to your, I won't call you sane, but no, I'm kidding. But
Use it liberally.
yeah, but honestly, like I think because you see your past and that evangelicalism and the spectrum of those two worlds colliding, and then still see the evil in both, and to come out still voting for love and not giving up on Jesus, but not looking all religious like either, right? So
Yeah,
somehow you've pulled that off. What contributed to the launch of your healing?
my grandson.
Really?
So I realized at the age of 27 that the Bible was not inerrant, that it wasn't literal. By learning that the Israelites, the Semitic people, were not the first people on this planet, as I believe.
Yeah.
So between 27 and 35, I walked away from the church in its entirety. My son went to church, but I was done. I was absolutely done. And the time that I did go, I was treated poorly. I was judged, all of these things. So I was done. But then my grandson came along and his mother reached out to me right before he was a year old and said that she wanted to have a christening. I explained to her that I wasn't Catholic and that was not something that I was aware of, but the Protestant churches did a dedication. She totally agreed to that. We agreed that I would contact the local church that Joey grew up in, my son. And I detail this in the book, but they said no, because his parents were not married and he was conceived in sin. They would not give my grandson a prayer because he was deemed unworthy. And at that point, it was like, oh no, you are not going to do to him what you did to me. And the book really started, it was the only complaint letter I have ever written in my entire life. I wrote that woman a letter saying, how dare you? Jesus never would have done this.
Yeah.
And you embody exactly what killed Jesus. She then came back and said, well, we'll do it after a ceremony or after a Wednesday service so no one sees. It's like, that's just disgusting.
That's trying to save face of pride, because now she'll have to answer to people that she has mispreached to.
Exactly. And obviously my email got to her, because it was just gross. Since then I've experienced it so many more times. It just reinforces the need for this book. But it started off as I'm going to show you how you're wrong type of thing. And it developed into a holy crap, I have been wrong about everything. And things started to really pose some clarity to me. Like, how could I have believed in a God that would be a worse parent than I am?
Wow.
I'm a flawed woman. I am a single parent who screws up on a regular basis, and I would never do to my son what this God claims to have done to most of the planet. So really getting into that and dissecting that, trying to find some truth in it. Was God this horrible being that I learned about? And offsetting that with the morals my best friend who was an atheist taught me was a strange dichotomy. I mean, she was the first person, and I met her at 14. She was the first person to teach me kindness.
Wow.
She was the first person to say, that's not very nice, Sheri, you shouldn't do that. And I was like, never heard that before.
What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah. What do you mean? God gives me the power. I can judge anybody I want. I mean, it was this huge dichotomy where I left the church and found love. And that was the journey of dissecting it all in order to get back to that. I was looking for truth, and the only truth I found is love. You can look at, and I measure truth as it must be applicable in all scenarios, all eras, all geographies. So what is true for the Aboriginals must be true for an American.
Ouch.
And the only truth that I found was love.
Yeah.
Because from the moment we are born till the moment we die, it is something we are searching for.
Did you find it difficult or embarrassing or humbling that as you began to chip away and add those different people groups, you found your own prejudices that need to be addressed and turned on its head as well?
Yeah, but they were like really thin layers of the onion that were exposed, that I was like, oh my God. Like, as simple as me as a child, when meaning to talk about the world, I would always say the US.
Yeah.
Even to that,
So typical.
Right? And I mean, just even realizing that, just even taking my head out of the American exclusion,
because we're North American and they're South American. So what do you mean American?
Exactly. Right. I even catch myself doing that. I posted something on Americans today. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get this. But yeah, I mean, those types of things that I didn't even realize. And it was justified by the Bible. I grew up in a Christian school. I went to church a minimum of 3 times a week. That was my identity.
Yeah.
Being a Christian, being Jesus's was my identity. So to be able to shake all that and still come back, because Jesus taught love. So while I say that Jesus is my main man, but I get around. I've learned a ton from Buddha. I have learned a ton from the Vedas. My degree's in comparative religion. I have learned a ton from Judaism. But I mean, Abraham was a very interesting guy. He was actually kind of funny. But you have all these things where if you only look at one source,
Yep,
it's
you're in
not
trouble.
okay. It doesn't
Yep.
broaden your depth.
It
And
shouldn't be a threat.
exactly.
Yep.
And someone asked me, how did you come back to Jesus? And it was because of his love. I
Yeah.
could literally go and say, okay, Buddha's non-attachment. The Vedas are deep understanding of karma and those types of things. Jesus was love.
Yeah.
So when I need my cup filled and how do I do this? I think of Jesus in Gethsemane.
Mm,
I think of, how the apostles, related to him, how he still fed Judas. It is among those things that I love. Everything else, if it's not through the lens of love, I have no need for it.
yeah. You said something earlier, right at the start of the trip of your journey that I love, and I wanted to come back to for just a moment, where you said I started off by trying to prove everybody wrong, and
Yeah.
I, I'm wondering how you now approach others you meet that are at that place, because I don't think it's a permanent location. I think it's one of the stepping stones to unlearning and rediscovery. Like, how is that? How do you feel when you bump into someone else who's trying to prove you wrong? What does it do to you?
Well, I realized in 2015 when I started my social media that nothing upsets religious people more than you have to love your neighbor.
Mm.
So that has been something I've been dealing with for many years now. And someone also asked me in the process of reviewing the book, um, these revelations happened. What made you believe them? Like I talk about, finding out that Mary Magdalene really wasn't a whore.
What?
Um,
She wasn't?
and this friend of mine said, most people would just shut that down
Yeah.
and say, no. So to answer your question, I am okay talking to anybody about beliefs and those types of things unless they hurt other people.
Yeah.
That is when I put my foot down and say, okay, you need to know the facts. If you indeed know the facts and continue to hurt other people, I
Yeah.
don't want that around me.
But I think you're also, because of your story and because you started on a journey of trying to prove people wrong, you understand what it feels like for somebody that's so frustrated that now finds something new, wants to prove to their people they're wrong,
Yeah,
but to have hope that that's not a permanent address,
right,
that there's a way of softening and love will win. You've
right.
modeled it in a really cool way, and the fact that you're approachable from other backgrounds. That's one thing I've really appreciated about you and the topics you cover. They're like wild topics that I won't even cover because, well, I'll just watch Sherry's. Let her get in trouble.
Yeah.
Um, but you create a safe place because I trust you're grounded in Christ. So if you're going to explore some of these different topics, like I already know you're grounding and you're giving permission that you can explore this stuff because Jesus has got your back. It's okay to explore things you've never been, well, actually, you've probably been told never to study those. So maybe
Yeah.
that's the reason why you should. I think that's really hard in the evangelical church because we're told what is true and that's it. You don't get to question stuff. And you're questioning everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw an Instagram video like a year ago, where this girl said, oh, I left the church and people said I lacked faith. And then the next scene is her walking in with 15 books and trying to research everything and go through her destruction.
Yeah.
And she's like, in actuality, this is what destruction or deconstruction looks like.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I wish I thought of that because that's what the book is.
Yeah.
It's walking through the things that cause pain and hate and division and taking away its authority. I'm going to
Well,
do a show on shame. Go
oh,
ahead.
good. Well,
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, finish your sentence, but I want to know who's this book for then. Tell me who the book's for once you
Oh,
get
okay. So one of the things about walking through the deconstruction and eliminating the power that these we call them gotcha or, whomping verses,
Yep.
is it eliminates the shame. It eliminates it when you take away all of the power that this judgment has, it eliminates the shame. So it's really easy to walk through and go, okay, well, I believe that. I mean, I believed I was going to hell just because I was a single mother.
Yeah.
So once you dissect that and go, okay, well, that's not true, boop, the shame goes away.
Yeah, because where did that concept come from? It was
Exactly.
planted.
Exactly. So when you dissect all of those things, that releases the shame, and you are enabling yourself to accept yourself at that point and pass on the love.
Yeah.
This book is for anyone who has doubted any part of their faith or needs a more spiritual connection outside of religion. One of the things that someone pointed out to me in another interview was that I really push no dogma or doctrine. And I said, no, because I really think if it's centered in love, that's really all that matters. We don't need anything else. And that's what Jesus said. If it's not about love, it's not about God. So while we may need things to say, okay, what would be the loving situation? And, like that type of doctrine to be able to understand love better, because a lot of people think love hurts. I did. I used to think that unless you criticized me and judged me, you didn't love me. I mean, that was just, and my dating history shows that.
Wow.
Truly. I mean,
Yeah.
trolls think they're coming at me online and they're like, you suck. And I'm like, oh, you love me. Because that's what God was, right? God was, you're not doing things right. You didn't. So if you didn't criticize me, you didn't care.
That's
And that's the
brutal.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to unlearn that love. I had to unlearn the controlling love, all of those things that
Which
I was
isn't
taught.
love, which is a
Pardon me?
fault. It's not love. If it's controlling,
Oh,
it's not love. So
exactly.
defining love's critical.
Exactly.
I'm gonna do one more quick, another rabbit trail. Sorry. Your book is about a deconstruction without throwing the word away. Because I know there's some groups that are starting to say deconstruction, we're over it now. We don't need to use that word anymore, but we do. Secondly, you're not destroying and you're not walking away from, you are recalibrating, rebuilding, renovating in a beautiful way without tossing out Jesus. In fact, the message of love, Jesus is love, God is love, comes through almost every single chapter. If I were to summarize it, but I think it's a deconstruction book, but it's not just a deconstruction book. It's more of a, tell me if I'm right or not, but it's like you want to rediscover what faith really is versus what you may have been told.
Totally. And that's why the title is We Have Ruined God. I
Mm.
mean, it walks through the man-made doctrine.
Yeah.
Originally it was titled Man Has Ruined God, but I was schooled on that. And the reason I did change it was because while I argued that men had all the power, women have gone along with it. Like 70% of congregants in any religion are women.
But you're also going to make more people able to read it now. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
take off a whole.
Yeah, I know the whole ego stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have a thread going on Facebook right now where it says that the Bible is how man understood God, not how God really wanted. And there's all kinds of people saying, no, it was inerrant and all of these things. But if I was going to give up my life here on earth for anything, it was not going to be for a God that was cruel and exclusive and had favorite children. I was not going to worship or try to align with anything that I would not align with on earth.
Yeah.
And going through all of the religions and realizing that they all intersect at love and let go. And a lot of people go, this whole surrender thing, evangelicalism has tainted that also, because
Yep.
they all say it. It's, get into the flow, let the universe, guide you. All of those, all of the major religions intersect with love and let go. Everything else can really be tossed if it's not helping you to love or to let go.
Yep.
The surrender is not this, it is this. It is thy will be done, which whenever I get stressed, I mean, that was probably the biggest lesson for me as a total control freak. Whenever I start worrying, what are the book sales? What are my interviews going? Anything? thy will be done. And it immediately, it was hard at first, but after more than 25 years of this, now it's my second or third thought of, nope, let it go. You know, if
Because
there's
we're
one thing I can
trained.
do,
Yeah, because we're trained in our religion to go for ego, go for the propping up, climb the ladder. And then there are respected positions because you have a degree or you have a role. And we, the lesser people, they don't get to the respect. Like it's a crazy hierarchy.
yeah. And there shouldn't be any hierarchy.
No.
It should all, I mean, we are all just leaves on the tree. It's, we're all part of this tree of humanity. And
And autumn's
we are
coming, buddy.
screwed. Yeah, but I mean, we screw it up. We create this hell on earth and
Yeah.
create all of these divides. And God, again, I'm looking at, the metaphor of a parent is just saying, can't you guys all get along? Just like parents do with multiple children. Stop fighting, love your brother, all of those things that you hear in most houses across the world. You go to church and go, no, that doesn't work here.
I have a hunch if people are going to read your book, which hope they do, they're going to hear a better gospel, which is supposed to mean good news, right?
Yeah.
And I think you unpack and divide the bad news compared to the good news in a really neat way that's not done well in other books, because I learned by comparison. And I think you've kind of rocked it with the comparisons here. I haven't told you
Yay.
that yet, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it. So
Fantastic. Thank you.
yeah, that's
It
cool.
it was, like I said, at 13 years. In fact, the launch party was actually to the day. It worked out. Again, living in the flow, you see these kinds of things, but as we talked about backstage before the show, formatting was killing me with this book. And again, I was stressing out, working 20-hour days. Um, and then let it go. Everything's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, it worked out that that May 11th was the date of the launch party, which literally to the day, I couldn't have planned it. I
Wow.
literally couldn't have planned it. And my grandson was there. So it was phenomenal. It was so amazing. And you get to see the rhythm of things.
I saw the pictures. I was jealous. I thought, man, that would have been fun to be at.
It was an awesome time.
Wow.
And I
Oh,
really think one of the things I really was proud of the most was the diversity of the crowd.
yep,
It
yep.
was
And it was there. Of course, it was diverse. Just kidding. Just kidding.
But I mean, there were gay people, there were straight people, there were reverends. I mean, there were atheists. It was just, I thought to myself, if this is what a Last Supper would look like, now
Wow.
this is to me what it would look like. I
So
was very proud of that.
you and I talked about your name on the book off
Yeah.
screen a while back, and it wasn't to diminish it, but tell us a little bit about your educational background and credibility for education wise. And I'm asking the question. You're not self promoting. I'm asking. So I'm just curious because some people won't know that, oh, you're just a single mom who's been through all this stuff. But honestly, just give us a quick summary of some of the stuff you've kind of walked through in that journey. Because
So I
they call you
have
Rev, really? Does that mean
yeah.
you drive fast?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Twitter, I refuse to use the real name. They call me Rebel Rev.
Okay.
The reverend status is an educational status, not a job position. And you and I talked about
Yeah.
that and how people would misconstrue that, which
Mhm.
I took because people ask me, you're a reverend, where's your church? So the reverend is, that is what my bachelor's degree is in. My
Wow.
master's degree is in metaphysical science, which is the science of God.
Yeah.
It is truly how I found God again. I could not believe that God was this being, because everything dies. And so God would not break his own rules. And I use God in his very liberally. But it brought me really back to a higher source, an energy of God.
Mhm.
And then my PhD is in comparative religion. So
Wow.
again, I was able to look at all of them. We don't get one book in school in
No.
any of the levels, but yet in religion, we say one book is enough. And I think the
Well,
more knowledge
Actually, in some Bible colleges and seminaries, it is just one or two books.
Oh. I mean, in my school, in my elementary and junior high school, the Bible was our science and history book.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, when I was 27 and figured out that the Israelites weren't the only people on this planet, it was like, what
Yeah.
are you talking about? It shook everything I believed. And then it was like, and I talk about it in the book about having to completely constrain my cognitive dissonance that was going on. I wanted to fall apart. I was 27 years old. I had a child. My mother had disowned me multiple times over this God, and I found out that most of all the stories weren't even true or correct rather. So having to go through all of those things, and I talk about it in the second section of like, prepare yourself, reader. You're going to go through this cognitive dissonance. You're going to go through this. Oh my God, I had no idea. A Black reader reached out to me and said, I didn't see the colorism in my Black churches until you pointed it out through
Wow.
your book. And that was like, oh my God. I mean, that's one of the things that I really address is the racism and the misogyny in the church. But to have a woman of color who has been deconstructing for 10 years come to me and say, I didn't even see the own colorism in my Black church. Those are the types of awakenings that the readers are going to have, where that's why I said the shame just goes away. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that was all crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a shame deals with a crisis. So in my mind, shame is I am something bad, where guilt is I've
Yeah.
done something bad. So I've always taken shame to be an attack against my identity, and therefore I feel
Correct.
bad. And I'm trying to fix it because I don't feel like I'm that what's being put onto me. I somehow I know I'm better than the shame being spoken over me.
Yeah.
But after a while, the voice gets so loud, it's all you hear. Then you start to
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah. I mean, and if that's all you're taught, then, I mean, in talking with people of color, powerful people of color, and seeing that they believe in a God of domination,
Yep.
just makes my skin crawl because I see the racism in it now. I
Yep.
didn't before. I didn't recognize any of that because again, I was raised by a racist and someone who believed that anything said in the church was divine. So there was not a questioning mentality that I was given in religion. It was, this is the way it is, to the point where I believed my body was part of that.
Wow. Well, let's get into the book. We only have a little bit of time left. Crap. But I want you to walk through the book with me just a little bit. Let's just talk about the sections because we can't get into all the details. But section one, give us a super short summary of section one because it's a teaser. Because by the time we're done, I'm hoping people want to get this book right away.
They have to. Section one is where I'm coming from. So, as the reader, my background, it's all of the massive dysfunction.
Yeah.
Some beta readers wanted more depth. I felt that any more depth could pass on trauma,
Yep. Yep.
but it really shows where my mentality
Oh, I
is.
think you went deep. Like that was fair, and I caught that. So I'm glad you went that far because that vulnerability, I think, instills trust. Yeah, if people get to know you more and more, they'll realize, oh my goodness, you're real. You're not some figure of trying to attain a role. That's
Yeah.
why I'm so glad you're not a self-promoter. Like there's so honestly, there are too many authors who everything's about your book. Oh yeah, I say this in my book. And it's always your book, your book, your book. I want to know you, not the stuff you do per se, right? Have somebody else promote it. Don't self-promote. So I'm thrilled how you're doing this. You've really thought this through, or it
Thank
fell
you.
into place because love is your base, not self-promotion ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I went through that too, as part of this, that it's the book is the message is all that matters, not
Well,
me.
this is a trophy now. Like now that the book is done, you can point to it and say, "This is a life's work,
Yeah.
and I've put my whole heart into it." So that part, promote, great. I think it's great. You know what I'm talking about. There are some
Yeah,
people who are,
I
yeah,
do. I
yeah,
do.
yeah. So then
Section two
session two is
is,
called "Before We Go Any Further."
those are my disclaimers. Those are what, because anytime we're talking about God, and I'm using quotes like I do in the book, because people have all of these preconceptions and their own beliefs about God that I really felt the need to say, this is where I'm coming from. I no longer believe God is a he, but I'm going to say he because it just makes it easier. And I
Yes.
talk about why.
Mhm.
I talk about how while I have deconstructed this evangelical brain, it is still an evangelical brain. So I'm viewing things through
Yeah.
this lens,
You're,
even though I try really hard not to, that's still going to come through
yep.
both good and bad.
But that's okay because you're straddling that world. And this book is for a lot of the evangelicals. It really
Yeah.
is because you're trying to show them, hang on, not everything you've been told is true. The Matrix, it's all about the Matrix again, right?
Everything's about the
I
Matrix.
know. Then your next section is you call it sin, which is an interesting way to have your first big section.
Yeah, and it's always been the biggest section because sin is what drives all of religion, right? It divides us, it makes us check our soul, it defines what sin is, and I break down the absurdity of a lot of sins, like potatoes were a sin. For almost 200,000 people died because they thought that potatoes were the devil's apple or the devil's root, and
Wow.
all of these really crazy beliefs. Tomatoes were a sin in New America. The Puritans believed that it was sexy, so they made it a sin. Breaking down how women were put in isolation because it was sinful to be out on your period, or it was
Yep.
sinful if you had a girl. All of the really stupid sins that we have been told. And I come to the conclusion in breaking these down and going that, because again, it affected my own life. My mother disowned me and everybody she loved because she felt they were living in sin and it couldn't affect her soul.
Yep.
So sin is the biggest section because it does affect us so much.
Can I cheat and ask what is sin now versus what?
Intentionally hurting someone.
Hmm, okay.
I don't, I mean, different religions and cultures define sin. Like Judaism says there's a passive sin, and then there's these types of sins.
Yep.
But I think that when you disregard someone's feelings, disregard their life in any way, then that would be a sin.
Lack of love.
A lack of love.
Wow.
Exactly.
Cool. Now the next section, number 4. Oh, they're animals.
Animals.
What? What's with the animals?
That's an interesting chapter because I got so many emails about, thank God you put this section in there. And then others going, why? Um, Animals is really a highlighting of our ego. It addresses the fact that a lot of believers think that we are superior to animals, thinks that God loves us more than animals, and that we can just do whatever we want to all of creation.
People can get that out of the Bible, can't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and I address that too, saying that, okay, we are supposed to reign over. And if we talk about how a king reigns, it is to take care of, to honor the people, to do those things. But it has been convoluted into power and greed.
Yep.
So trophy hunting, looking at animals as to do anything with our own pleasure. I use marine entertainment parks as an example. It also sets up the next chapter, which shows that animals in a lot of ways are superior to us. And for instance, an elephant, if it was walking by and saw a stranger elephant dying, that elephant would stop and stay with that stranger elephant, while humans would step over the body and complain it got in their way. So I really show how much more loving and compassionate animals are, and we disregard them as something that doesn't even matter.
So was that an intentional segue to the next section?
Yeah.
It is called God Loves the Gay, and you have a real heart for this family of people, and it's been fun to watch. Tell me a little bit about this section.
The segue is that scientists have discovered, in fact, there's a new documentary coming out, I think it's on Hulu or Netflix, that over 1,500 species on our planet, different species, have between a 3 and 20% homosexuality segment. So even if homosexuality was an abomination, then God has a real big
Which is a
problem.
bad translation of the word anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. So I point out how, historically speaking, the church wasn't against homosexuality. I show how there are sets of Catholic saints that have tons of architecture built in their names. I point out how the centurion's servant was probably his lover,
Hmm.
and Jesus said he had the greatest faith. I point out all of these things and show how that right now homosexuality is just the church's target.
Yeah.
It's more division, it's more types of those things. And the book is dedicated to my friend Tony, and his son killed himself because his evangelical family and church said that he was an abomination. So after a picnic, he went and jumped off a bridge. And that's
Yeah.
part of the shame I am really trying to stop.
Because they're treating animals better than humans.
In some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not trophy hunting the
I know.
LGBTQ,
I know.
but yeah, I mean, and people are like, oh my God, animals can't be gay because that would shatter all of the belief systems that need to be shattered.
Yep.
Yeah,
No, you're definitely using them shattering, but you're not shattering to destroy. I think what you're shattering what isn't true. And so
exactly. It's
you're
highlighting.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think God can handle challenges. The scriptures can handle challenges if you ask the right questions. God's not afraid of the truth. It's lies that
And if he is, then again, I have a problem
wrong
with that.
God. Yeah, yeah, me too. Next section is evolution of Christianity. You get into a number of topics there.
Yeah, and that breaks down of how we've changed, how the doctrine has changed. People think it's inerrant, and if it was inerrant, it wouldn't have changed.
Like,
So
folks, if you see how many chapters are in this, like, what?
they're short though. I mean,
I know
they're
they're
not
short,
really, yeah,
which is readable
very
for someone like
digestible.
me.
Yeah, yeah. If you have ADD, you'll love this book.
Yep. That's why I liked it. Next section, Jesus. Now then we're going to get into divine, but Jesus is the next chapter. So wrap that up.
So it gives a different perspective of outside of religion. I look at a lot of the apocryphal texts,
Mm.
including the infancy of Jesus, which says that, holy crap, he was he was not a good child. It shows, I also address his sexuality, his humanity, what we know, what we've been told, and those types of things. For me, I did not walk away with Jesus being divine. And that was kind of a heartbreak at one point for me. But I think that also broadened my sense of Jesus. And it wasn't so limiting. It really, I could look to him for love.
Mhm.
As I said backstage, Buddha, I get these types of things. I get all of these types of things. But for Jesus, that's where I go to learn how to love.
Yeah, I like that.
And none of the other stuff matters.
So you
He
hit the
doesn't have
word
to be divine for that.
divine was in that word. So you cover that. The next section, because we're almost done here. God is too big for one religion.
It breaks down how they all came together, what Adam and Eve were truly not the first people, and how did we get to where we are now?
Yeah, and you cover a number of religions, which is cool. Next section is science versus God.
How I came back to God.
Yep, that's
I mean,
cool.
and
Especially
it
with your degree, right?
yeah. It talks about the flood. It talks about creation, because creation is a big thing with believers and atheists,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So, it talks about those types of things. And again, that's how I discovered the energy of love.
I like this next section, section X, death.
It's 10.
I know, but it's X.
But again, it did work out, right?
I
We were
know.
talking about the synchronicity.
But you get into consciousness, reincarnation, attachment of our body, soul moves on, other side, heaven and hell. You actually touch on that. God is
There was a point that I was really scared. There was, through this process of, first of all, who am I to write this book? Secondly, of, oh my God, this is really going to upset a lot of people. But there became a boldness of, what if it's the truth, it can stand on its own.
Yeah. Yep. And you're not alone, because the voices are being raised up in different places. You are one of the singers in the choir, and the choir is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, if it causes shame or fear or any
Yep.
of those things, it should be discarded.
Yes. And last chapter is section rather is what I now know.
Yeah, it's a culmination. It's a summary of the book, re-emphasizing things that maybe, again, it's a big book, bringing things back to each section of, here's the highlight. Here's, some people said you could have left this section off. Other people said it was their favorite. So I think that's the beauty of the book, is there's so much in there
Yeah.
that it should be something for everyone. And it's structured in a way where if you read it and you want to reference it, that table of contents gets
Easy.
you right there. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, I know she said this, what was it? And I think the longest chapter is 5 pages,
Okay.
maybe 7.
Do you have a copy of the book nearby?
I do.
Well, okay. Okay, there we go.
Look, can I share something real quick?
I was hoping you to talk about the cover.
Okay, and this is a bad cover because it has the thing.
Oh.
At my launch party, I had all of the guests sign a copy.
That's cool.
So yeah, so they're all through this. So this is my personal
That's kind of
copy.
thick. That's like a really thick book.
It
That's
is.
not a novel. Like a
It
mini.
is. Yeah, yeah. It's 412 pages, but 77 of them are blank. It's for formatting.
Perfect for study. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, because of formatting, everything has to
Yeah.
restart on the right page and all of that. But the cover, this was a culmination of 3 different people's work. And I really thought that it showed. In fact, I kept saying, make the hands whiter, make the hands whiter. It shows how it's being controlled. The masses are being controlled. There's strings, there's people hating. And that's really what I'm addressing.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I remember the conversations about that and the fingers, the puppeteering of people.
Yeah, we're trying to get it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then I think we finally got it.
Yeah. And what's interesting, even though there's fire in it, you're actually dealing with a fire of love. You
Yeah.
really are. It's being purged.
Burn all the crap away.
That's what it is. This book is about burning all the stuff away that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. My journey out of religion and into unconditional love. So, Sheri, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for sharing with me about this, like off the cuff, without digging in fully. But hopefully, we've left enough of a teaser for folks. But this is a good go-to, especially for the honest questioner. I think it's really good. So, all right. Well, thank you, Sheri.
Thank you so much. It was a blast. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. I hope you enjoyed that meaningful conversation. I sure did. Sheri's book you can purchase on Amazon if you're depending what country you're in. But look her up. Her website address. I think I showed that earlier. And tune into her Fireside Creators program. It was really, really good. Anyway, yeah, she's awesome. Quick update for all of you. We have something starting on June 5th. We are starting on the GAN network, the Grace Awakening Network. We're going to be live every Wednesday evening on this TV station. You can watch it from Roku or online. This is a huge one. Anyway, I hope I'll tell you more next week on that because I think next week we launch on that, so you'll hear it in the morning. So yeah, next week we go live on Grace Awakening Network. It's gonna be pretty cool. All right, yeah, get her book. Some of you are commenting. Cynthia from the UK and Art and Karen, good morning. And Joy is watching. Yeah, it was. I enjoyed the interview as well. She's easy to talk to. I really like her. She's crazy, which is fun. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll take a look at what's going to happen next week. So if you enjoyed this, let us know. And by the way, Cynthia, I saw your comment that you wrote this. Your dissertation was on how gays are discriminated in the church. You know, I'd love to see that. If there's a way to get a copy of that, just to see what you wrote. It's a big topic right now. So yeah, Jen Nice is definitely getting this book. I have it on Kindle because I know in Canada the Amazon ones are really expensive. So Kindle will probably be the most economical way to get her book. So I hope you'll enjoy it. All right. Thanks again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace. Next week, we launch a brand new set of stuff because we're going to be sharing our Wednesday morning stuff as well on the evening live program on the TV station, Grace Awakening Network. So stay tuned for that. And for now, we'll catch you next week.
Join me next time on Still Growing in Grace. Enjoy previous episodes by downloading our podcast at growingingrace.ca. If this show's been an encouragement to you, consider making a donation today. For our Canadian link, visit growingingrace.ca, and for our USA link, visit eschurch.com. Your donation will help us continue spreading really good news. Thank you again for tuning in to Still Growing in Grace.